I just found out my wife borrowed $250, $0 from her wealthy uncle to fund her secret startup, then forged my signature to refinance our house. Now she's insisting I'm responsible for the debts and fighting me over the property. What do I do? Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, typing this out, but here I am. Everything changed in a blink. One moment I was trusting my wife, Lisa, and the next, I was staring at a mountain of lies and betrayal. The most shocking part, I found out she's been cheating on me for months, and the whole time she was also secretly sinking us into debt I had no idea about. Honestly, I still can't wrap my head around how someone I loved and trusted could do this. It all started with small things. Lisa became more secretive about her phone, hiding her texts, deleting messages. She'd get defensive if I tried to look over her shoulder or ask about where she was going. She'd cancel plans last minute, and when I pressed her, she'd say she was stressed or busy with her work. I figured she was just overwhelmed, and I didn't push it too hard yet. I wanted to believe she was just busy, but the gut feeling kept gnawing at me. Something wasn't right. Then, a few weeks ago, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know, that's not the best move, but I was desperate. I found texts from a guy named Mark. They weren't just friendly exchanges. They were flirty, intimate, and sometimes downright sexual. She was talking about meeting him, sending nudes, and even mentioning how much she needed him. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I thought I was building a life with, was cheating on me with some guy I'd never even heard of before. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I thought about confronting her right then, but I needed proof. So I kept digging. I started noticing small things. Her phone was always glued to her hand. She was sneaking around more, and she seemed more tense and defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. That's when I found out she'd been lying about where she was going, who she was seeing. I even caught her in a lie about her business trips, which turned out to be dates with Mark. But the biggest shock came when I discovered the financial side of things. I knew she had some savings, but I had no idea she'd borrowed $250, $0 from her wealthy uncle to fund some secret startup. She kept telling me it was just a side project, nothing serious, and she didn't want to bother me with it. Turns out she had forged my signature to refinance our house, our home, to get the money. I found the documents in her drawer one night, and I swear I felt my world crumbling. She lied about everything, about her business ambitions, about her finances, even about her fidelity. I confronted her that night. I was furious, hurt, and confused. I threw the papers on the table and asked her how she could do this. Her reaction: she spun some wild story about how it was all for us, that the startup was her dream, and that I was just too insecure to see her potential. She called me controlling and paranoid, and then she said I was responsible for the debts because I was so possessive. That was the moment I realized she'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. She was still insisting everything was fine, that I was overreacting, that I was the problem. But I knew better. It hit me hard. I felt angry, betrayed, and utterly stupid for trusting her. How could she lie about all of this? The affair, the money, the forged signature, all of it. I felt so stupid for not seeing the signs sooner, for not noticing the way she avoided my questions, for not realizing she'd been planning all this behind my back. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the warning signs? How did I let her get away with this? I loved her, and now I was left with a mountain of broken trust and a future I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to believe there was some way to fix this, to save what was left, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of something much worse. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined, and I had no idea how I was going to get through it. All I knew was I had to figure out my next move, and fast. After that night, everything felt different. The house, which used to be my sanctuary, now felt like a prison. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I looked at Lisa, I saw a stranger, Someone I didn't recognize, someone who had been living a lie right under my nose. I kept replaying everything, trying to make sense of how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind to what was going on. The worst part, the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, legal, and personal all at once. The next morning, I decided I needed to get some clarity. I started digging into the documents I found. The refinance papers were real and they were forged. Lisa had signed my name without my consent so she could pull out that huge loan. I felt sick, just thinking about how close I'd come to losing our house. It was our home, the place I'd worked so hard to build, and now I was staring at the possibility of losing it all because of her reckless, selfish actions. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I wasn't going to let her spin her lies or gaslight me. I needed proof, evidence, and a clear head. So I contacted a lawyer first. I explained everything, her affair, the forged documents, the debt she'd hidden from me. Lawyer listened carefully, then told me I had grounds to challenge the refinance, especially since my signature was forged. He also warned me that Lisa might try to claim I was responsible for the debts if I didn't act fast. That's when the anger really started to boil over. How dare she try to pin this on me? I decided I'd confront her again that afternoon. I wanted answers, and I wanted to know if she was going to keep lying. When she came home, I was already waiting in the living room. I laid out all the evidence, photos of the documents, the texts from Mark, everything. Her face went pale, and for a second I thought she might break down. Instead, she looked at me with that cold, bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. "Oh, you found out," she said, crossing her arms. "Big deal, you're overreacting. I did what I had to do for us. You're just jealous and insecure." I couldn't believe her. This was her explanation. That she borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars in secret, forged my signature, and cheated on me, all because she was worried I'd stop her. I told her I wasn't buying her crap anymore. I asked her how she could lie to my face, how she could betray everything we built. She just shrugged and said I was too stupid to understand her vision. I felt my blood boil. I told her she was a damn liar, a manipulator, and that I'd be taking legal action. I was done being her pawn in whatever sick game she was playing. That was the point I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not as a wife, not as a partner. I knew I had to protect myself and my interests. I'd already lost so much, my sense of security, my trust, so I decided I'd fight back, no matter how much it hurt. That night, I stayed up researching everything I could about fraud, refinancing, and how to protect myself legally. I also started thinking about what I really wanted, whether I could ever forgive her, whether I should even try. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. It was like I'd been hit by a freight train and all I wanted was to wake up from this nightmare. But I knew I had to face reality. This wasn't just about money or lies. It was about the fact that my wife, the woman I loved, had been cheating on me and lying to my face for months. I started feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and determination. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I'd fight for what's mine, the house, my dignity, and maybe even my self-respect. I knew this was only the beginning, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I just had to figure out the best way to do it without letting her manipulate me further. I had to be smart, cold, and prepared for what was coming. The next few days felt like I was living in a war zone inside my own head. Every time I thought I had a moment of clarity, some new piece of her lies or her betrayal surfaced and knocked me right back down. I started talking to lawyers, financial experts, anyone who could tell me what my rights were and how to protect myself. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Borrowing that huge sum from her uncle, forging my signature, secretly refinancing the house, all behind my back. I also started noticing new things. Lisa's phone was constantly buzzing, even when she was in the shower, even late at night. She'd get defensive if I looked at her screen, which only made me more suspicious. I decided to check her messages again, carefully this time. Sure enough, I found more texts from Mark, more explicit, more intimate. She'd been sneaking around, hiding her affair, all while pretending everything was fine. The worst part, she kept lying, telling me she was just friends with him, that I was. imagining things that I was paranoid. One night I caught her in the act. She was on her phone texting him again and I just lost it. I grabbed her phone and her eyes went wide with panic. She tried to snatch it back, but I held firm. I read the messages out loud and her face turned red, then white. She stammered, said it was just sex, nothing serious, just some fun she needed. She told me I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure. That's when I knew I had to put an end to this. I told her I was done listening to her lies, that I'd be filing for divorce and taking her to court over everything. The confrontation was intense. She called me controlling, accused me of being paranoid, and said I was ruining her life. She even had the nerve to claim I was responsible for the debts because I was so possessive and abusive. I just looked at her and said, "You've been lying to me from day one. You've been cheating, stealing, and manipulating. I don't know who you are anymore, Lisa." Her eyes flashed with anger and something else, maybe guilt or just pure hatred. Either way, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I decided I needed to get legal help immediately. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud and divorce. We went over everything: the forged signatures, the debt, her affair. The lawyer warned me that if I didn't act fast, she might try to claim I was responsible for the money or that I was an unfit husband for suspecting her. I didn't care. I was done being played. I told him I wanted to fight for the house, for my rights, and to expose her lies. I also told him I'd be gathering evidence, screenshots, bank statements, anything that could prove her deception. That night I sat in the dark, feeling numb. All the anger, the betrayal, it all swirled inside me. I realized how much I'd trusted her, how much I had invested emotionally and financially. But now I wasn't just betrayed, I was also fighting for my future. I had to decide whether to try to salvage what was left or cut my losses and walk away. The thought of losing everything, including the house I worked so hard to pay off, haunted me. But I also knew I couldn't stay with someone who had lied to my face, who had cheated and stolen from us. The hardest part was realizing that this wasn't just about money or a house anymore. It was about respect, trust, and the future I thought I had with her. I started to see that I'd been living in a fantasy, believing that we were building a life together, when in reality she was tearing it apart behind my back. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I had to get out of this for my own sanity and peace of mind. Whatever happened next, I knew I had to be strong and do what was right for me. The day I decided to move forward with everything was a blur. I met with my lawyer again, laid out all the evidence, and started planning my next steps. The legal advice was clear. I had a solid case to challenge the refinance because of the forged signature, and I could potentially get her to pay back the money she borrowed in secret. But more importantly, I had to prepare for the worst: divorce, loss of the house, and the emotional fallout that would come with it. I also contacted a private investigator, just to be sure I had all the facts straight. I needed to know if she'd been seeing Mark for longer than I thought, how deeply involved she was financially, and if she'd left any other surprises behind. Sure enough, the pie found her sneaking out at odd hours, meeting Mark in a hotel, and even making secret deposits into an account I didn't recognize. She'd been planning this escape for a while, I realized. All the pieces clicked into place. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to deny everything. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of trying to control her, and insist she was doing all this for us, for her dreams. She spun stories about how she loved me, how she was trying to build something special, and how I was just too insecure to see her potential. But I knew better now. I saw through her lies. She was a master manipulator, and she'd been playing me from the start. One afternoon, I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the divorce papers I'd printed out. I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Part of me wanted to fight for the marriage, to forgive her and try to rebuild what we had. But another part knew I couldn't trust her anymore. How could I? She'd lied about everything, about her affair, about the money, about her plans. I realized I was better off walking away, even if it meant losing the house and everything else I'd worked for. I made the decision to serve her with divorce papers that same evening. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. When I handed her the papers, her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned, then furious. She started yelling, calling me names, saying I was ruining her life. But I just looked her in the eyes and told her I'd had enough, that I was done being her pawn, her fool. I told her I fight for my rights, for the house, and for my dignity. That night I stayed up late again, feeling exhausted but strangely relieved. I knew I was making the right choice, even though it hurt like hell. I'd been betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, legally, and I couldn't let her get away with it. I started gathering more evidence, saving copies of bank statements, emails, and texts. I wanted everything documented. I knew this was going to be a long battle, but I was determined to see it through. In the days that followed, Lisa became more aggressive, more bitchy, trying to manipulate me into dropping the case. She called me a control freak, accused me of trying to ruin her life, and even threatened to destroy me if I went through with it. But I didn't back down. I stayed calm, focused on my legal strategy, and made sure I had all the proof I needed. Deep down, I knew she was panicking because she realized she'd lost control. Looking back, I realize how much this has changed me. I trusted her with everything, my heart, my money, my future, and she threw it all away. But I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can stand up for myself, and that sometimes love isn't enough. There's a difference between loving someone and being blind to their lies and betrayal. I guess I was blind for too long, but at least now I see the truth clearly. And that's the first step toward moving on. The days turned into weeks and the legal process moved surprisingly fast, at least faster than I expected. My lawyer managed to get a court hearing scheduled, and I prepared myself for what was going to be a tense showdown. I had all the evidence I needed, the forged signatures, bank statements, her secret texts, and even the private investigator's reports. I knew Lisa would fight tooth and nail to keep her lies hidden, but I was ready. On the day of the hearing, I felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. I sat in the courtroom, watching her walk in with that same bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control. Her lawyer was trying to argue that everything was above board, that I was just paranoid, that she was trying to do what was best for us. But the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was clear. Her forgery, her secret debts, her affair, all laid out plainly. When it was my turn to speak, I felt the weight of everything I'd been through. I told the court how I'd discovered her lies, how she'd manipulated our finances, and how her affair had shattered what little trust I had left. I explained how she forged my signature to refinance our house without my knowledge, putting our entire future at risk. I saw her trying to interrupt, trying to spin her lies, but I stayed calm and focused. I knew this was about truth, and I had it on my side. The judge listened carefully, then delivered a ruling that stunned everyone. She ordered Lisa to pay back the entire $250, $0 borrowed from her uncle plus interest, and declared the refinance invalid due to the forgery. She also granted me sole custody of the house, given how Lisa's financial misconduct and infidelity had severely damaged the foundation of our marriage. The courtroom was tense, but I felt a strange sense of victory. After all the lies, all the pain, I finally had some justice. That evening, I went home alone. The house was eerily quiet, but I felt a strange calm. I knew this was just the beginning. There was still the emotional fallout to deal with. But for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to breathe. I looked around at the empty rooms, the memories of a life I thought I was building, and realized how much I'd been betrayed. I'd lost trust, yes, but I'd gained clarity. I knew now that I couldn't stay with someone who lied and cheated her way through our marriage. Over the next few days, I started packing up her things. It was surreal, like I was removing the remnants of a life that wasn't mine anymore. I felt angry, hurt, but also a strange sense of liberation. I'd been living in a nightmare, but I was waking up. I'd fought hard for everything I cared about, and I was finally taking back control of my life. I also started focusing on myself, therapy, reconnecting with friends, and figuring out what I really wanted moving forward. The biggest lesson I learned: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight to protect yourself and your future. No matter how much you love someone, if they're dishonest and manipulative, it's better to walk away than to stay and be dragged down. I don't think I'll ever fully forget what happened, but I do believe I'll be stronger because of it. And one day, I hope I'll find someone who values honesty, loyalty, and respect. Someone who won't betray me the way Lisa did. Until then, I'll keep rebuilding and moving forward, one step at a time. Looking back, it's hard to believe how everything unraveled so quickly. One moment I was blissfully unaware, trusting the woman I thought I knew, and the next, I was facing a complete collapse of everything I believed in. The betrayal hit harder than I expected, more than just losing the house or the money. It was the loss of trust, the sense that I had been living with a stranger all along. But amidst all the chaos, I realized something crucial. I was stronger than I thought. I had survived the shock, the lies, the legal battles. I had fought for my dignity and for my future. The whole experience taught me that sometimes love isn't enough. No matter how much you care, if someone is willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate, they're not worth sacrificing your happiness or integrity. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't just about the legal fight or the money. It's about reclaiming your life from the person who tried to destroy it. I also learned that revenge isn't about getting even. It's about clearing your path to move on without the weight of betrayal dragging you down. Now I'm rebuilding. I've started therapy to process everything and to heal my emotional wounds. I've reconnected with friends I'd pushed aside during the chaos. I've also become more cautious, more aware of red flags, and more committed to protecting my peace. The house is no longer her home. It's my sanctuary again. I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance for renewal and growth. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore your instincts. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the people you least expect. But also remember, you are resilient. You can survive even the most devastating betrayals if you stay true to yourself and fight for what's right. Life is too short to be wasted on lies and manipulation. Keep your head high, your standards high, and never settle for less than honesty and loyalty. Because in the end, that's what truly matters.